run through and show you guys a couple parts I use to extend the rear quarter panels. So we got these metal shears right here. We use these to cut the 24 gauge sheet metal to extend the rear arches. We also use this chisel right here, of course, to pull it apart, pull the panels apart a little bit. Helped out a lot. We use these center punches for all the spot welds. I bought like 4 or 5 of these from Harbor Freight. This is from Harbor Freight as well. We got some sanding discs from Harbor Freight. We also use this belt sander from Harbor Freight. This thing came in handy. Also this grinder from Harbor Freight, Chicago Electric. So we'll use this Maddox metalworking tool set. This thing did help out a lot. Safety glasses, of course, paint marker just to help us mark a few areas. Also did get about 8 spot weld drill bits. I don't have those on me right now to show you guys, but I did get them for Harbor Freight. Also use this 240 volt spot welder from Harbor Freight. The only thing that sucks about this is you do have to buy this plug right here, and I ended up getting this from Home Depot. So I got this zero rust inhibitor. I actually got this to spray on the areas where I grinded down the rust from. Obviously have the weld through primer here. I used about 2 cans of this. Also got this panel bond right here from 3M panel bonding adhesive, and I use this around the gas cap only. I got this wax and tar remover to clean the areas up before we threw any of this on. Another thing I did get was the seam sealer, which was by 3M, and I don't have that on me right now to show you guys, but that was pretty much it. Just a couple of tools that you need to get this job done. So we got this first quarter panel mocked up here. So the way we did this, we actually scratch the top there a little bit. It doesn't matter, the car's getting painted. So what we did is we got this whole new rear quarter panel here. So we marked where the old quarter panel, which is the orange side, was onto the new GTR quarter panels. We hit that line right there, we marked it. Then what we did is we cut 1 inch over that, cut 1 inch above right there, and then we knocked it down a little bit till we got down to this line. So little by little until we got there. Now it's sitting pretty much perfect. The only thing we have to do now is just grind it down just a little bit, little by little. Make sure we don't go too far. Just grind it down a little bit so it sits in there nice and flush. So we're testing out the R34 quarter panels, and man, these things look insane. So much wider than the GTT quarter panels, and I'm glad I went this route. Even though it's quite a bit of work, it's gonna be worth it, as I've said many times. As you can see, these body lines are lining up pretty good. We just got to adjust these panels a little bit, maneuver them a little bit, get them to sit just right where we want them. It's lining up pretty good. This body line is also lining up good. We just have a little bit of adjusting to do. So we managed to get this lip as flat as we could, being on the car the way it is, because we can't really get those metal plates behind it, and I didn't really have anything to put behind there. So we're going to have to wait until we cut this thing off in order for me to flatten it out a little bit more, get it to sit much flatter, in order for it to line up with the rear quarter panel. Man, these quarter panels just look so much wider. So as you guys can see, the last clip, we ended up grinding down all the spot welds, and now we got to line both of the quarter panels to exactly to where we want them. In order for us to do that, we got to make sure all the lines and gaps are perfect, and on top of that, we got to make sure the tail lights, bumpers line up perfect before we go and set this thing down. We have like 1.5 to 2 inch gap, I would say, here. That's the reason why we have to cut the rear wheel wells and extend them, so that way we could butt them up to this quarter panel. But now we're going to test with the trunk, tail lights, rear bumper, make sure they're all lined up before we get any further on this project. So we're testing everything out. Everything lines up pretty good, but the only way to really tell is get the GTR tail light covers on, because these are the GTT. GTRs are wider, and we're waiting on the rear bumper brackets just to double check that everything lines up as it should. So just to update you guys on what's been going on. So we cut that piece off, clamped it to the quarter panel, put the quarter panel back on, lined it up, and welded those metal tabs on there to keep it in place. You can see we did the same thing on this side. We had to extend that piece there, so we cut a piece of metal, extended it. Obviously it's a little bit wider, so we got to extend it a little bit more. We got to make the template, set it on there, and weld that whole thing shut with the 24 gauge sheet metal there. So I'm gonna have to swap out these tail light covers in order to line up the quarter panels properly. The GTTs are narrow, the GTR covers are wider. As you can see, that edge right there, it's a lot wider than the GTT, so we're gonna go ahead and swap these out. So the rear bumper brackets arrived, and we're gonna go ahead and rivet these things on in order to get the bumper lined up properly. All right, so we got the rear bumper, tail lights, and trunk on. We still need to get the GTR trunk. It should be the same thing, but man, all the body lines look perfect. Everything lines up as it should, so I believe we're ready to proceed with the next step. But man, these tail light covers look amazing against this black and orange here. Man, and seeing the car like this just gets me that much more motivated to get this thing done and over with, and I can't wait to see this thing done. So I ended up making some templates out of paper and transferring them onto this 24 gauge sheet metal, which I ended up cutting out to fill in these gaps on these rear arches. So next step is to get these welded up, and that would be one step closer to getting this thing done. And man, I cannot wait. We're so close, yet so far we still got a lot more work to do, but we are getting there, and we are getting there pretty fast. So the rear arches are finally welded. We still got to go back and weld some of the pinholes. I mean, it's not that great, but still looks decent. So we're going to go ahead and grind all these welds down, put some seam sealer and some weld through primer. So the weld through primer and seam sealer are now on. We also ended up grinding all the paint off around all the edges, as you can see here, and throwing some weld through primer on there so we could just go ahead and weld the rear quarter panel on. Before we do that though, I will have to grind that down to metal before we weld that up. I'm also going to add a little bit more seam sealer. We actually ended up adding seam sealer underneath the wheel wells as well as weld through primer. But yeah, the weld through primer is on. So we threw on the GTR trunk, the GTR tail lights, just to make sure these quarter panels are lining up correctly, make sure all the edges are as they should be. And from the looks of it, it looks like these tail lights are lining up perfect. The trunk is lining up perfect. All the lines are pretty solid. The reason why the trunk sits lower is because there is no rubber grommets inside that we have to throw on. We haven't thrown those on yet, so that's not a big deal. But looks like the quarter panels are lining up perfect, and this is the last time that the quarter panels are going to be lined up. So one thing you guys missed, I ended up grinding on all the edges on both of these quarter panels and throwing on some weld through primer so the welds stick nice. This is the last test fit of these rear quarter panels. I wanted to make sure they stay where they are, so I ended up putting some self-tapping screws across the whole quarter panel, because we do have to remove it once more to throw on the seam sealer and the panel bond that goes beneath the quarter panel. So let's get to it. So the R34 GTR quarter panels are permanently welded on, as you guys can see here. So I ended up using the spot welder along the door seam here and the welder in areas where it needed it. So I just ended up doing all of the spot welds, like the ones you could see here along this bottom lip right here, one right there, about 3 or 4 here, and around this window trim here. Homie Odie actually ended up welding the rest, so huge shout out to Odie. I couldn't have got this done without him. So next step is grinding down all the spot welds, so let's go ahead and get to that. And I forgot to mention, we actually ended up burning a hole through the carpet. A spark fell on the carpet and it burned up that hole. Luckily, we caught it in time before it spread out even more. and thankfully the seats will cover that portion. But this is just a reminder, guys, either remove your carpet or throw on a welding blanket. We forgot to throw it on as we were doing it, and that happened to us. So as you guys can see here, we got all the spot welds grinded down, all nice and smooth. But before it heads to bodywork, we got to add seam sealer around all the edges where it needs it. After that, we got to go ahead and clean up the interior of the car. Throw the front seats back on. The rear seats, rear speaker panel are staying off of the car until the car is back from paint. But we are going to have to clean up this interior because it's a big mess right now. We're also going to have to clean out this area right here. There's metal shavings everywhere. They got all over the car. Should have probably covered up a little bit better, but we didn't. So, oh well, it happened. And we also got to clean out this trunk, put all the parts into boxes so we don't lose anything. I'm also going to have to take off this headliner right here because I'm sure a lot of metal shavings got in there. So I'm going to have to take it off, clean it out, probably spray it black. So the R34 quarter panels are finally done. And man, this is such a surreal moment. I've waited so long to install these and they're finally on the car. It's not only surreal to have these quarter panels on, but to have the actual Skyline sitting here itself. This is crazy. Like, this is a dream right here. And it's finally going to head to paint. And I'm excited to show you guys the color that I'm gonna do. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you probably already saw the color. If you haven't, then you'll see it in the next video, or go check my Instagram, you'll see the color. But you don't want to miss the video, it's gonna be good. So it actually took about a month and a half to install these quarter panels. I didn't work on it every day, anywhere from 2 to 5 times a week, and anywhere from 2 to 5 hours a day. And it wasn't every day consistently. It was just like random times. I'd come in for an hour, do a little bit of work, or come in for a few hours, do a little bit of work, until we finally got it done. I cannot wait to show you guys the end product when this car is done. But stick around, subscribe, keep watching, because this is gonna be a crazy build.